Yellow movers and makers, I'm Spindle Specs, your guide to the world of fibers. Today, I've got a real fun subject for you guys. Tell me, when you watch a movie or a show, can you pick out the things people wear, say, and do that don't quite fit the time period? Are you sure? See, sometimes there are details that designers have to change or leave out, and it's not because they aren't accurate. Let's talk about why. Sit back, check your tension, and let's get stitching. Have you ever heard of the Tiffany effect? In case you haven't, here's the gist. Tiffany is a perfectly accurate historical name, dating back into the medieval period, but historical fiction and fantasy writers struggle to use the name in the medieval settings because, to most audiences, it sounds too modern and it's distracting. Thus we have the Tiffany effect. Anything that is historically accurate, but most audiences won't accept because it's too modern. My personal favorite example of this is nipple piercings in the Victorian era. Yes, you heard me. Now, this should hardly be a surprise. The Victorians were well-known freaks, parentheses affectionate. I'm hoping to talk about jewelry made of human hair another time. But nipple piercings? It's true. And not just nipples. It is also said some may have pierced their, more private parts as well. This was something almost exclusively performed by the upper classes, seeing as they had the money for the jewelry and the resources to keep the area clean, an extremely important thing to avoid some truly unfortunate infections. This was a display of wealth, and, let's be real, also a fun kinky thing between partners. Since it was mostly private, and mostly among the very rich, there are few reliable accounts on the matter. But not zero. In a Letters to the Editor type column in the April 1888 edition of the magazine English Mechanic and the World of Science, a young man shared an anecdote of his buddies bringing him along to get their nipples pierced as a group activity while at high school in Paris. There were many responses to this in the following issues, including a story a woman shared of telling her fiancé of the column, to which he told her she should also get them pierced and revealed his own piercings, performed in London. Some doctors chimed in to warn of risk of infection, concerns that the piercings may cause scar-based cancers to form, and some non-doctor men, though notably the doctors did not think this was even a concern, expressed that they thought women specifically getting the piercings would interfere with their duty to breastfeed their children. Men with no medical experience policing women's bodies. What else is new, am I right, guys? God help us. One woman named Fanny countered by informing the readers of English Mechanic that she had no trouble nursing any of her children despite her piercings. You go, Fanny. I also must shout out a woman named Madame Beaumont, who evidently invented her own set of clamps specifically for nipple piercings. We love innovation. Madame Beaumont, by the way, was American and apparently had a reasonably successful business doing this. So we have confirmed piercing parlors in France, England, and America, all before the turn of the century. But good luck selling anyone on Dorian Gray with pierced nipples, even though it would be both true to period and true to character. Next on my list of favorites is fingerless gloves. This Hot Topic staple is very, very old, seemingly going back to at least the Roman era, if not earlier. Of course, early on in the life of fingerless gloves, they were purely practical, a way to keep the hands warm while keeping full dexterity for sewing, knitting, and other detailed labor. However, by the 16th century, it was not unheard of for wealthy men to remove the fingers from their leather gloves so they could show off their fine rings and wealth. And once again, in the Victorian era, it was not uncommon to see women with fingerless lace gloves, no warming purpose, purely for show. Now, when the modern goth movement began to take hold, it took much inspiration from the Victorian era of fashion, hence the name Gothic. So it's little surprise that fingerless gloves, especially lacy or mesh fingerless gloves, will return as well. And I'm quite thankful for it, because I love these things. When you think of jeans, when do you think of them showing up? Chances are the oldest image you can conjure is around the mid-1800s, with miners and cowboys wearing the classic denim look. Though even then, it feels weird when I remind you that cowboys are a 19th century thing, doesn't it? Because the mental image of the cowboy is so thoroughly based in 20th century westerns, it feels newer than that. But that's a whole other matter. Even when you look it up, many sources will claim that jeans were invented in the 1850s by Levi and Strauss, with some sources such as Vogue even going so far as to claim the duo accidentally discovered how to make denim in the mid-1800s. Credit where credit is due, Levi Strauss did revolutionize jean construction, but they did not invent the garments. What they did was, on large scale, start putting those little metal brads in the high tension points of fabric where a lot of layers meet, to reinforce pants with metal at points where the fabric and stitching were most likely to pull and wear out. Though this was also not Levi or Strauss's idea, it was the idea of a small tailor named Jacob W. Davis, a Latvian man who mostly made tents, horse blankets, and wagon covers, using Levi and Strauss's denim. Story goes he was commissioned by a woman who needed exceptionally large pants for her very big husband, and wanted them made as sturdy as possible so that they would last. So Davis used the copper rivets, usually used for the pockets on horse blankets, to reinforce them. Soon word got around, and demand outstripped his ability to keep up, and he was too poor to patent the design himself. So he asked Levi Strauss for help, and they secured the patents, and then hired him to oversee construction of their facility. But regardless, that was innovation, not invention. Don't confuse a good ad campaign with invention. That's how Edison conned us into thinking he did anything worthwhile. No, denim was actually invented much earlier. Early enough that it's hard to pinpoint an exact year, but we do know it was sometime around the 1500s, with it having become common by 1576. It was invented in Nimes, France, with the material indeed being called serge de Nimes, shortened to denims, which as you can see became denim. It was created by weaving 2 layers of blue weave threads and a single layer of white weft threads, which is why the outside is blue and the inside is white, and also why frayed denim leaves white threads. This double weave technique made the material stronger, and it was cut on the bias, hence the name serge, which made it a little bit more flexible. It was also made in blue because indigo dye was relatively cheap to experiment with. This was recreated in Italy after some struggle, and Italian denims became known as jean, with an E at the end, which is why the pants made from it were called jeans. This material was very common for outerwear, but not usually for anything close to the body, because pure denim is rough and uncomfortable without a buffer. Denim jackets actually predate denim pants. Fun fact for you! But it did become a worker's fabric, and with a little bit of a softer cotton added in, became decent pants for people who were more concerned with longevity than comfort. And not much changed until Davis got creative with some copper pins. I could go on. There are so many other things that are older than you might expect. Bikinis can be dated back to the 4th century, seen in Roman murals. Nail polish goes as far back as 3200 BC in Ur. It goes on and on. But what is the takeaway of all this? Well, for me, the takeaway is that you could absolutely do a production of Hamlet where you put him in fingerless gloves and a denim jacket, and any reasonable adaptation of Dorian Gray should give him nipple rings. But more importantly, perhaps, the point is to never assume you know exactly how the past really was based on popular knowledge. It often paints an incomplete picture, and while these examples were harmless and kind of silly instances of that, what we forget about the people of the past isn't always so innocent. Oh, and be wary of trusting the first sources you see when you do an internet search. Try to find at least 3 corroborating sources with good citations. Contemporary sources from the period are best when possible, and museums are very good too. So, yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions or topic suggestions, feel free to drop a comment. Spindle Specs, springing out.